In this video, I'm going to be going over what modern Pokemon games are doing wrong and what I think could be improved upon in future generations. I don't think there's a community with more differing opinions than the Pokemon community. For every person that loves a fan favorite like Charizard, there's a fan out there cheering on an underdog like Spinder from their corner. Whether you agree or disagree, I would love for you to leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Let's start with arguably the most important part of the Pokemon games, the way we catch Pokemon. In the Let's Go series, Pokemon are caught in the style of Pokemon Go. There's no battling, just you, a Pokeball, and the minigame of trying to get that ball as close to the center of the circle while simultaneously allowing the circle to shrink as much as possible. I somehow just managed to make the easiest catching system in the entire series sound complicated, but it's far from that. This system lacks options, and honestly, it feels tedious and unrewarding. Catching a Pokemon just by flicking a Joy-Con has no personality. It feels empty and almost like a shell of a battle. In Sword and Shield, we return to the traditional catching formula, which felt like a breath of fresh air. Catching a Pokemon by either getting lucky with that quick ball or battling it until it had low HP and putting it to sleep brought back that adrenaline and excitement to catching Pokemon, although that was until Pokemon Legends of Arceus was introduced. PLA brought us the most unique and diverse catching mechanics of any Pokemon game. We were able to hide amongst the grass and throw a Pokeball at a Pokemon and catch it from behind without a battle or take that Pokemon into battle just like we were used to. We were finally given what we've always wanted: options. Though with options comes an unfortunate drawback. When you're playing a video game for countless hours and trying to catch as many Pokemon as you can, you tend to look for what's the most time efficient. So even though we were given the option, most people caught their Pokemon in PLA by launching balls from the grass and essentially machine gunning Pokemon catches. This made an otherwise amazing system lack in its personality. It unfortunately is not possible to feel a meaningful bond or connection with a Pokemon if you don't even remember which of the 20 of that Pokemon you've caught in the last minute that this Pokemon is. That being said, when we returned to the regular catching system in Scarlet and Violet, we couldn't help but feel as though something was missing. They'd given us options, but then they'd taken them away. That is something a player never wants to feel. So how do they fix an issue like this? How do they give us options without us feeling locked into one because it's so time efficient that we end up losing our connection with what we're doing? In my opinion, PLA almost had it perfect. I think that the stealth aspect of catching Pokemon was great, but it was the speed that we could do it that made it so impersonal. Why not incorporate the same system, but make it so unless we use the right berries to lure Pokemon slowly, its chance of being caught is minimal. That way, if we instantly caught a Pokemon, it would be memorable. I would also love an option to be able to fight a Pokemon with my trainer just like we did the bosses in PLA. Having the option of stealth, regular battles, or battling it with your trainer, dodging around all available, and all just as rewarding as each other would make the catching system incredible for any kind of player. After all, we as players want options, but we want to feel rewarded for our work. Now, I'm aware that mass catching was a major part of PLA and probably likely a large reason of why the catching system was the way that it was, but I'm talking about having these systems available in a main series Pokemon title. And if the game was focused on mass catching, then bringing down the number of Pokemon needed to catch would work great with this new system. Another major part of these games is of course the battling system. Now this system is largely the same across most Pokemon titles, the main difference usually being the generational Pokemon gimmick, like Dynamax or Terrestrialization, though again in PLA the system was completely changed. The addition of the agile and strong style moves was fun and refreshing, but unfortunately wouldn't have a place within competitive Pokemon. These moves influenced the turn order in a way where Pokemon could attack multiple turns in a row, and you couldn't switch out your Pokemon if it wasn't your turn. Removing counterplay from Pokemon battles would be a terrible idea and make battles feel completely one-sided. I think the traditional battle system works, and attempting to change it messes with the main formula and why we love the Pokemon games. In my opinion, if they just threw away the generational gimmicks and put Mega Pokemon back in the game, a lot of fans would be happier. Though one thing I'd love to see in the main series Pokemon games is the ability for our trainer itself to battle. They don't need to add boss fights like in PLA, but even as small as our team being wiped out, not sending us back to the Pokemon Center, and us having to be careful around wild Pokemon because we aren't immune to danger would give these games that adrenaline and life that PLA had. Again, it should come with options. Perhaps some areas will have nothing but passive Pokemon, while others are a little harder, so we can still have those relaxing places to go. We don't have to hinder one style of player to reward another. Something that greatly influences the battles is of course the Pokemon stats and abilities. In both Let's Go and PLA, they took away abilities and EVs. Though in PLA these were replaced with ELs, but that's a system I really didn't care for. I understand that these changes were made to simplify the game for newer players, but it completely takes away a Pokemon's identity. I mean, imagine how much worse Gold and Go would be without Good as Gold. It also makes a Pokemon feel less versatile. A Pokemon can never outspeed what it doesn't naturally. It can never tank a hit that it couldn't naturally. Everything's locked into one role and one playstyle without any variation, and it creates an incredibly stale metagame. When it comes to competitive Pokemon, I don't believe simplifying the top end is the right choice. I believe that simplifying the accessibility is. We do that through systems like breeding. In Sword and Shield, breeding acts as it always has. You take your Pokemon to the daycare and you receive eggs, and then you hatch them. Scarlet and Violet, on the other hand, introduced picnics. Picnics are an amazing addition to breeding and a perfect example of what the newer games have done right. The ability to gain so many eggs quickly and use a sandwich to increase the speed of hatching is absolutely brilliant. That with the change to bottle caps allowing them to be used at level 50 instead of 100 has made getting that perfect Pokemon easier than ever. Though this system still has its drawbacks, we still don't have a rusty bottle cap, a way of turning a Pokemon's IVs down to 0. As I've mentioned, we as players want options. Being able to get that perfect competitive Pokemon without breeding would be an amazing option. It would allow us to use the Pokemon we've had by our side during our adventures out on the competitive battlefield. We could even use the shinies we've encountered and make those perfect. Not to mention how tedious it is to release the Pokemon we've hatched from breeding. PLA had a mass release function. Now if we want to do that, we have to transfer our Pokemon to Pokemon Home. Why are we taking away features? Did we not learn anything from BDSP? Which brings me to my next point, HMs and Ride Pokemon. I am glad that we've steered away from the HM system, but I do miss the ability to choose which Pokemon had access to those features. Since Sun and Moon, we've had Ride Pokemon, though we haven't been able to choose which Pokemon we ride on. Pokemon Let's Go gave us far more options. We could fly around on our Charizard if we wanted to, or jump on our Dragonite. We could ride on our Arcanine, Persian, Rapidash, hell, even Marchamp or Onix, and many more choices. Not to mention we could even see if they were shiny. In Scarlet and Violet, our only option is the box legendary of whichever game we chose. Again, stop taking away features. Give us as players the option. I caught a wild Tauros? Cool. Let me ride it. Let my journey feel like my journey. After all, Pokemon is an RPG, which to be fair, it's starting to feel more like lately. The ability to craft Pokeballs in PLA and craft TMs in Scarlet and Violet is a system that I would love to see them expand upon. But character customization, the outfits we can wear on our trainers, why are these going backwards? Why are we losing options and being forced to lose our immersion? In PLA, I can dress like a normal guy or a shinobi. In Scarlet and Violet, I can dress as a student or a student. I can't even change my top without changing my pants. Everything is a joined outfit without customization, and this might seem small to some, but is a big deal to a lot of players. Now, when it comes to the main story of the games, I believe that PLA and Scarlet and Violet are the best ones we've had in a while. I felt as though I cared about the characters, I wasn't wanting the journey to end so I could go to the battles, and I was in for the ride and wanted to see where it would go. I'm not saying these can't be improved upon, but they've definitely gone in the right direction. Unfortunately, the post-games have felt very lackluster. Why is there no battle tower? The one we got in Sword and Shield was so toned down and lost its appeal quickly, but I still sunk a lot of hours into it. It's a fun place to go mess with weird strategies or battle while relaxing. Sometimes it's not even relaxing. I don't know who here played the battle tree in Ultra Sun and Moon, but keeping that streak became stressful, especially the further you went and they started throwing a legendary Pokemon at you. It was cool to see what fun strategies you could come up with and how far they could take you. That's again another feature that's been taken away from us. Speaking of the post game, the world should feel full and fun to explore. little caves around the world that lead us to interesting locations, areas that feel vastly different from others, and please give us the ability to explore these worlds at more than 12 frames per second. I feel the main thing modern Pokemon games are doing wrong is that they struggle to give us anything new without taking something away. Even something as simple as Sword and Shield having overworld Pokemon and Pokemon hidden in the grass, yet in Scarlet and Violet we only have overworld Pokemon. It's okay to be innovative, it's okay to add new systems like crafting, but I think going forward, the focus should be more on expanding features and making them better. Just like they did with picnics, just like they did with bottle caps, and just like they did with ride Pokemon. Let's do this to systems like EVs and give us set locations to go to make EV training a lot easier and more streamlined for casual players. Pokemon is an amazing franchise full of incredible games. I hope that in the future they build upon what they have instead of constantly trying to change it. Now, there are still a lot of topics I didn't touch on in this video. Things like multiplayer, the online modes, Dynamax adventures, terror raids, and even things like the horde modes and outbreaks. I didn't want this video to feel too long. I'll be making videos dedicated to those topics here on the channel, so make sure to subscribe if those are topics you think you might be interested in. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, and as always, thank you so much for watching.